War, the trial of the century, and some stuff that's just kind of hard to talk about. That's right, it's time for the top 10 most uncomfortable moments in history that most of us don't know about, part 2. Number 10, the obvious one. I talked to the chief early this morning. He looked at me and he said, that's not it. World War II, history's favorite mustache man, and the tragic loss of life that was the Holocaust. The German answer to the Jewish question, or so they described it as, was a deliberate and calculated effort to annihilate the Jewish peoples of Europe. And if they had won the war, most likely the world. Sent to labor camps where most met their ends to brutal torment and termination. As if this wasn't enough, Jewish peoples were not the only targets, as pretty much anyone deemed unworthy by the state was sentenced or dealt with. POWs, political rivals, civilians, Slavs, homosexuals, and just anybody. It was really bad, man. All of these people found themselves at the worst of humans, and a part of the worst destructive conflict in human history. My small tidbit does not do it justice. It is a conversation that should always be had, and not from a semi-funny internet host. Number 9. The not so obvious one. Arguably worse, and I'm not even sure how that's possible, is the Holodomor. What exactly is that, you may be asking? Well, don't feel silly for not knowing. Unless you are Ukrainian or family that are, you most likely would not know. Basically, in the 1930s, Ukraine started to outshine the newly formed Soviet Union and was gaining economic independence. In a totalitarian communist regime, that's not what you want your people to do, as if they do, they'll most likely rebel against you and your oppression. So, Joseph Stalin's answer was to oppress the people of Ukraine even harder. Arrests, intimidation, and removing leaders from their position. Any leaders, even local church leaders. Collectivization meant anyone's land, property, and for this case, grain, the state's land, property, and grain. The deliberate starvation of the Ukrainian people left millions dead in what rivals what was happening in Western Europe years later. Yet again, another situation that is difficult to talk about, and I cannot do it justice in this short amount of time. But I can tell you what happened and can maybe make a dark situation lighter with some humor. Number 8. The Sleeping Giant's Revenge. When Japan attacked the US naval base of Pearl Harbor in 1941, they thought it was a move in their favor. Knock out a good portion of the US Pacific Fleet and damage the base, so rebuilding and reorganizing will take time. Time Japan needed to conquer the Pacific. However, this was a stupid plan for many reasons that honestly could be its own video, but the main reason being that the US had the industrial and economic might to take on all Axis powers single-handed. And now they had a reason to fight. That's a very dangerous enemy. Their mistake would be fully realized in 1945 when the US launched the first nuclear bombs ever to be used on a real civilian target. The cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki were vaporized in seconds, and hundreds of thousands of people perished. Most wars end in a depressing walk into the treaty room. World War II ends with the apocalypse. While these nations were at war, the debate for use of such weapons and the decision made is still talked about today. Number 7. Going through this list, there's going to be war. Unfortunately, it's a part of human history. Not that I'm taking a position of pro or anti-war, you just can't deny the loss of life and destruction it causes. But something I think most Americans remember because so much can be learned from it, the Vietnam War. The 60s were a crazy time to be alive. There was huge cultural changes happening everywhere, but America was having trouble at home and trouble abroad. A war that was meant to contain the evil spread of communism so it didn't dare make its way to America's backyard. After years of destruction, loss, and enough horrific images to give anybody PTSD, thousands of lives lost on both sides, and while both sides did fight bravely, it is an American loss. A humbling moment in American history. Shortly after America pulled troops from Vietnam, Saigon would fall to the communists and is now Ho Chi Minh City. Number 6. Mirrored. The Vietnam War was an interesting time for America. The Viet Cong proved to be a very formidable foe. How does a small Asian nation take on the world's largest superpower and come out on top? Well, by playing lives. Sure, VC would lose almost every battle, but they would take a lot of American lives in the process. It was a bad look. However, none of this would be possible without Soviet support. After all, Russian weapons don't grow on trees. Communists from Russia and China supported the VC, so when the Soviet Union was headed to Afghanistan in the 80s for pretty much the same reason, guess where the Mujahideen got their anti-aircraft missiles from? Yeah, that's right, the US. Although different in details, in broader strokes, the Soviet-Afghan War is the exact same war as Vietnam. Years of ruthless fighting, guerrilla tactics, and superpowers aiding the resistance. The Soviet army pulls out years later. Perhaps a humbling moment for the big communist bear. I don't know. It's weird how the same thing happened. Like the exact, that's so crazy. How could you let the same thing happen? I don't know. Number 5, destiny? I, for one, am not a believer in destiny. I believe that if you want something bad enough, you can take it and make it yours. But in a modern world, I think we all carve our own path. Not to get too Marty McFly on you, but have you ever thought of a choice you made when you could have made another? Like, what if I didn't have Taco Bell on my 21st birthday? Would I still have vomited after those 12 tequila shots? I'll never know. But one choice, or rather blunder, changed the world as we know it is the assassination of Franz Ferdinand. Triggered World War I, which caused World War II, which caused the Cold War, which is why we live in a globalist world where technology and economy have redefined everything we know. Franz's driver took a wrong turn in his car and ended up beside one of the amateur assassins. All that just from one bullet, one man. Who knows what would have happened if that turn wasn't made? Guess we'll never know. Anyone down for some Taco Bell? Number 4, the Bay of Pigs. Cuba becoming a communist country in America's backyard was scary. I mean, what if they tried to spread the idea of free healthcare? I'm just kidding. In a world of mutually assured nuclear destruction, this was actually pretty bad. So before things could get any worse, the CIA put together a crack team of anti-Fidel Cubans supplied with American weapons and training. And so, the Bay of Pigs invasion commenced. However, after reducing the amount of air support to aid in the landings, in hopes that it would clear America of any involvement, not sure how that works, the CIA force was quickly defeated, and even had Castro boasting his cadre's effectiveness on the battlefield as it was coming to a close. It was not a good look for America, as it seemed the communists really might be more powerful. Not to worry though, Google how many of those countries are left. We came out on top. Just took, 70 years and a bunch of wars, but we came out on top. Number 3, the glove. Michael Jackson's one glove look was the second famous glove next to O.J. Simpson's glove during the trial over the death of his wife Nicole Brown and Ron Goldman. Despite evidence pointing him being guilty, the verdict came in not guilty. Millions of people tuned into what was called the trial of the century. No matter how you feel about the verdict, it can be uncomfortable to talk about, as 2 people were still killed, and their killer may still be on the loose. I mean, there's also a book that he wrote called If I Did It. All I'm saying is if I took a cookie from the cookie jar, I wouldn't tell my mom a story about a little chubby kid going to get a cookie in the cookie jar. Number 2, Avast, landlubbers. Pirates, literally any one of them really, but most famously the Pirates of the Caribbean. Despite how cool Disney and Johnny Depp make pirates look good, they were actually a nasty lot. Sure, maybe not the worst, but at the end of the day, they weren't great. Crooks, criminals, terrors of the sea. Blackbeard, probably the most infamous pirate besides Jack Sparrow, raided many ships in his time, and he didn't exactly ask nicely. Oh, and they'll relate down to number 1 as well. You guys will like this one. Number 1, Hygiene. You guys love Hygiene. I can tell from watching Taylor's videos. There's like 6 parts. But think about it for a moment. Think about what the average person smelled like before 1850. No indoor plumbing, no regular bathing, and no Irish Spring. I gotta have my Irish Spring. For me, I always think how uncomfortable the room must have been on that summer day signing the Declaration of Independence. Here you go, John Hancock, sign here and take a bath, man. A lot of history's defining moments were also probably the stinkiest. That's gonna wrap it up for me today, guys. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe here at Bumblebee. And if you too like good hygiene, check out my socials linked down in the description. I've been your host, Big Ched. Stay sweet, my little honeybees.
It's very nice candy.
Okay. There it is. There it is. I don't. There we go.